Welcome. This is Hude Hour right here on Hude Network. I am Blessing Dagin. I'm not alone in the studio. I have with me Omokafe Dennis and Sharon Aji. Hello, ladies.
Hi, Blessed. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Sharon?
I'm okay. You look amazing,
Thank you so much. You guys look amazing.
Thank you.
Well, let's get the ground running first with our headlines. Nigeria unveils landmark disability inclusion report as UN strategy nears deadline. Well, now let's take details of our news. Persons with disabilities make up about 15% of the world's population, nearly 1 billion people. Yet, many still face discrimination and barriers in education, healthcare, and employment. In 2019, the United Nations adopted its disability inclusion strategy, guiding agencies to improve accessibility and accountability through 2025 under the global pledge to leave no one behind. As the strategy nears its final year, Nigeria has released its first State of Disability Inclusion report. The study highlights progress, but also major gaps in laws and services nationwide. Findings show that while 23 states have passed disability laws, only 15 have agencies to enforce them, and more than a quarter of health facilities remain inaccessible, reflecting current shortcomings while pointing to urgent reforms. Campaigners are now urging stronger enforcement, nationwide audits, and inclusive investments. Well, later in the program, Michael Ojediran, Programs Lead at Project Enable Africa, will join us to explain what these findings mean in practice and the road ahead for disability inclusion. Well, this looks like a very good news, talking about the first ever State of Disability Inclusion report in Nigeria. Yep. And very interestingly, it goes with the UN's 2022 to 2025 strategy for people with disability. Let me start with you, Omokafe. Your take on this?
Oh, I believe that this is something that should be looked at constantly, because people living with disabilities will forever be included in our world. And so it's high time that we start to include them in every single decision that is made. Nigeria, for one, of course, is progressing. But then when we look at other countries, we see that they're even progressing more, and we should start to import such kind of solutions to us. For example, in the US, you see that one of their train stations or their train system, should I say, discounts their train prices for people with disabilities. Now, this enables them to be able to travel without having to think of so much cost for trainings, for job employment, or even for other things that they might want to assess as people living with disabilities. You have them in so many other countries to doing such kind of things. Now, when we start to import such things, or maybe even find some homegrown solutions as regards this, then I think we should have better inclusivity as regards disability in our country. And by next year, when the result is coming out, or the report is coming out for 2025 State of Disability Inclusion in Nigeria, I hope to see that the thematic laws that were included in this one, which has to do with some of them were accessibility, were education, were employment. I hope to see more progress in that compared to the one that we saw for this particular.
Well, very well said, Omokafe. Thank you so much for your take on that, Sharon.
Well, I would say it's actually disappointing that the UN strategy is ending in 2025, and we are just bringing out our first report in 2025. And of course, from what the outlook, you would see that we are progressing, but we are not there yet. 23 states have enacted this, implemented the law. Why just only about 15 have agencies to implement? To me, that's not a good percent, if you ask me. We need to step up, Nigeria, in regards to our disability. We need to step up. And to think that Nigeria has actually rectified, the country with the UN Convention with rights of people with disability in 2007, before even implementing, or rather before enacting the law in 2018. So we've been on this game right from time, but the implementation seems to be, far-fetched. We are literally behind. And I'm just hoping that with this report, lots of, feedback will be brought in and we'll step up the game. And I'm hoping, just like you said, in 2026, when another report comes out, we would have a more progressive report than this.
Well, thank you so much, Sharon. You spoke really well on that. Now, first of all, we should take a look at the fact that the 2030 benchmark, that's talking about the SDG goals, we have disability inclusion as one of the major targets. So now it's no news that the UN, coupled with that, created a strategy that will last from 2022 to 2025, being that they want to check progress, they want to ensure they have inclusive leadership, they want to ensure they have inclusive infrastructure, they want to ensure they have inclusive working systems for people with disability. Coming down to Nigeria and having its very first disability inclusion report, it looks like a good thing because this is 2025. However, does it mean that by 2030, we should expect that the UN goals for disability inclusion will be met by Nigeria? Well, that's a very deep question we need to start asking if we must get results come 2030. Because if you compare Nigeria to its foreign counterparts, you made mention of US and some of the things they have in place for disability inclusion, you see that they are moving ahead. But when you come down to Nigeria, you rarely see it. Infrastructure, almost a zero. There are very few places that you would go to and see that the structure is made in line for disability inclusion.
Exactly.
So these are some of the things we need to check if progress must really be made. But then it's one thing to say Nigeria released its first report for disability inclusion. But then what happens next is the question.
It's not just about releasing a report, but we're also talking about implementation, because that seems to be one of the problems of Nigeria. Somebody will say Nigeria has one of the best laws you can find all around, best system of government and the rest. But then when it comes to implementing those laws, we get to see that we are lagging behind, and it's that lagging behind that we have to, start destabilizing. We have to destabilize it from the roots. We have to come from local governments down to, the government itself, down to also the federal government, the state government, the federal government. And by the time we have been able to destabilize all the things that is making it lagging behind, and then start to implement these laws and saying that it sees the day of light, then I think we would have a better conclusion.
Yeah,
in the next one.
Just to step in regards to implementation and infrastructure, in Benin Republic, of course, a neighboring country, you cannot have a structured building. You cannot even raise a building without having like a slope, part where, a wheelchair can
move.
Access through to the building. Now we have the stairs and we have that area. They don't care if any disability person is going to access that building or whatsoever. You must have that structure. And that's what we talk about, implementation. So it's one of the issues we have in Nigeria. And of course, we can even lend that initiative from that of Benin Republic and just not implement in our infrastructure, but also in our dealings, in our, literally everything we do in regards to disability.
Well, thank you so much for all of that. One major thing is also legal frameworks. Are the laws that are binding as regards disability inclusion active? Are they working in Nigeria? When you check the counterparts of countries like you earlier mentioned, the USA, the US, you talk of Germany, you talk of Japan.
Talk of UK, Netherlands.
They have very working legal frameworks that bind, just like you gave a mention of Benin. If it doesn't happen, they come and then you are not able to put up the structure, so we need to look inwards and see that it's not just about putting the report out there. We need to ensure that implementation is key.
Of course.
Now we take a very short break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Michael Ojediran. He'll be here to talk about the state of disability inclusion globally. Please stay with us.
everybody has a stake in making the world a better place with love and compassion. As we thrive daily, we continue to strive to face the many challenges that faces our Earth, because together we all matter. On one side, we are exploring the captivating stories, the trends, the glamour, while on the other hand, we're looking at the love, the care and compassion from our champions. In our Stars Quiet Cove lies the burning passion for humanity, which is seldom known and unsung to the world. Join me on Famed to look at the flip side of your favorite beyond the regular.
Well, thank you so much for staying tuned. We're now back and are being joined by Michael Ojediran, who is the program's lead at the project Enabled Africa. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Michael.
Thank you, Blessing, for having me on the show this morning.
All right, so let's go straight to business. So, Michael, you were directly involved in Nigeria's first ever State of Disability Inclusion Report, which was launched earlier this year. Can you briefly just walk us through what that report particularly aimed to achieve?
Thank you so much. The Disability Inclusion Report, implemented by Project Enable Africa, in partnership with the National Disability Commission for Persons with Disability, was inaugurated in 2024 as against the deadline window, grace period for the implementation of the Disability Prohibition Act of 2018, which has a grace period of 5 years, which elapsed 2024, January of 2024. The focus of the research work piece report is to look at the level of implementation across board in the 36 Nigerian states, including the Federal Capital Territory, to look at how well is disability inclusion being mainstream across our immediate environments, and to look at what are the gaps that exist. And the reports did not only showcase the gaps. The report also profile recommendations and solutions in order to also bridge those gaps that exist in mainstreaming disability inclusion in Nigeria.
All right, thank you so much.
That was a really great answer. And I think your answer leads us to the next question, which is the fact that when it comes to implementation in Nigeria, it's a whole lot. You mentioned specifically that for the disability implementation kind of law, it took 5 years. Or down to 2024, we are seeing that it's just left to 15 states are still yet to implement it. So generally, including, of course, disability, what do you think is implementation when it comes to Nigeria? What's the exact problem of implementation in Nigeria?
Yeah, thank you. Law without implementation is a promise unfulfilled. And that's we must understand as a society and as a country. There are many laws that just exist on paper or in the constitution with little or no implementation. And well, though since 2019, when we had the arts passed into law, there has been some level of improvement, I must confess. I think about that 2019, we only have about 6 states that has a local or a state-owned disability law. And we've had a lot of improvements where, as it stands now, as at the end of 2024, we have 23 Nigerian states which has their own state disability law, and 15 states has their agency that monitors the implementation, which is also showing a very large gap. 15 out of 36 Nigerian states having a state agency or commission that monitors and also enforce the implementation of the law. So the level of implementation will be limited if we don't have an agency. And I'm not a lawyer, but I know by most of the Nigerian acts or laws that we have is always also establishing an agency of government or a parastatal or or a commission that monitors the implementation of it. And that is why we had the National Commission for Persons with Disability included in the Act, which is an establishment of the law.
Exactly.
So in terms of implementation, I must confess that we are lagging behind. Though we are not where we used to be, but we still have a lot to cover in terms of disability, inclusion of persons with disability in our society.
So there's progress.
Yes.
Well, good to hear progress. But then it's been months, or should I say it's been over a month since the report was launched. And definitely the report made recommendations, like you rightly stated. Now, as an organization who readily made that report available, what next? What are you putting in place to ensure that implementations are followed through? Because it's one thing to have the report ready to highlight problems, to highlight gaps. What are you doing, as an organization? Because I'm sure this brought different stakeholders together. What are you doing as an organization on your own part to ensure that you do your bit to make implementation a success?
Yeah, I must say that, the highest level of change is with the government. CSOs, individuals can just do a bit. Whatever we do is just a drop in the ocean. The highest level of change can be experienced or can be driven by the government.
Okay.
And what we are currently doing as an organization for persons with disability is to ensure that we are in talks and engage key stakeholders, both at the federal and the state level, with our key findings from these reports, and also giving them recommendations on what you can do on the short time and also on the long time. And I can tell you for fact that we already have conversations which are ongoing, number one, with some of the states that are yet to have their own disability law, because law is like a framework that guides us.
Exactly.
Yes. So without that, there's no something that we can hold accountable of. Then we are also currently engaging states that even have this law and don't have the agency to monitor and enforce the implementation of the law. We are currently engaging those states too. The other thing which I would also like to say is that one of our key recommendations from this report is that there must be a national monitoring and an appraiser toolkit, which can be administered across states, across the federation, which is saying that in Nigeria, this is our standard for disability inclusion. And anyone who see the documents can easily assess the level of disability inclusion per state or across the federation. And we can, on yearly basis, look at our scorecard and say, okay, last year, this person rates this way, this person has this state has this, there has been a level of improvement. These are the gaps that exist. And going forward, these are the things that we have to do. And the other parts that we're also recommending, disability inclusion requires funding. Yes. And we must begin to advocate for investments in disability inclusion, both at the parts of the government and also the corporate organizations and also international organizations to drive and ensure that persons with disability are not left behind in our society.
Well, that leads me to a very interesting question. Talking about funding is key, as you've rightly said. But then in this season where donors internationally are pulling back funds, withdrawing, reducing or cutting short fundings for countries or states that are dependent on them. Yes, you mentioned that we could do it at our own state level and to organizations or corporations. But then what could you suggest will be a means to find funding aside depending from donors? Okay.
One of the ways that I think we can begin to look at generating funds to promote disability inclusion is we must first of all understand that disability inclusion is not just about persons with disability. It's about creating a society where everyone can thrive.
Yeah.
Right? So, and we have to now look inward. to ensure that most of the social protection programs are also targeted to meet the needs of persons with disability, especially supporting some of the innovations or even businesses or employment opportunity for persons with disability. Because once, according to the WHO, disability is almost linked to poverty. When you have many of persons with disability lifted from poverty, you have more of these persons economically viable and be able to even provide some of the necessary devices that can also help them integrate themselves into the society. So in that way, we are now looking inward. We have more businesses led by persons with disability that are more profitable, that are more sustainable, and also improving economic opportunities for persons with disability who are also maybe less privileged, who does not have access to some of these essential business services or even employment opportunities.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Let's go back to the previous answers that you have given as regards legal framework guiding this whole disability inclusion. You had mentioned earlier that Nigeria, of course, across states, we're seeing that some states have some laws that are, very connected to them. It's their own inclusion and everything. But then we're seeing that the UN strategy for disability closes soon. And Nigeria seems to is not so much in the positive limelight as regards that. What do you think Nigeria can do as regards framework? And also the present framework that we have, is it in alignment with that of the UN disability strategy?
Oh, okay. So, first of all, part of the UN disability strategy is to ensure that there's an inclusive disability leadership, or a leadership that also has a reflection of disability matters. I know for a fact that the UN resident office here in Nigeria has a disability coordinator, which is also part of the way we can also see that is also being done
for inclusion.
Inclusion.
I think she was present at the Project Enable event. I think Ene Umo,
Yes. So that is also a first step. And I know that many of the programs of the UN initiative or projects in Nigeria as the component of disability. Currently we have projects with UNICEF, which is also supporting girls, young females with disability, to guide them in terms of their career choice, and also help them, upskill them with entrepreneurship skills, in order for them to also earn livelihood. So that is one on its part. But I must confess also that there are gaps that we need to cover as a country, which is broad. For instance, the Nigerian Disability Act has like 5 major sections, which reflects the relevant articles of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability. It has about 50 articles. For instance, our report, the State of Disability Inclusion report, took 5 of those articles, which we know also reflect the current reality of persons with disability in Nigeria in the area of accessibility. I think Article 9 of the UNCRD, Article 9 speaks about accessibility. There is Article 24 that speaks about education. Article 25, Article 27, Article 28. Those ones speaks about health, speaks about social protection, and also speaks about equal opportunities, or let's say
which was also included in the Project Enable report.
Yes, which was also included. So now we have to now look down to what is the level of implementation, or what is the level of disability inclusion across these 5 thematic areas. Now, in terms of employment opportunities, most or largely recruitment processes are not targeted at persons with disability, and which is leaving them out of employment opportunities. The Nigerian Disability Acts are mandated that every employer of labor must have at least 5% of their current workforce as persons with disability. Then we should ask ourselves, let's pick an organization, for example. Do we have, let's say, out of 10 employees, do we have at least one person with disability? I can tell you, no.
True.
Well, the question is, are they applying?
Some are, like, I think one of the documentaries right there at Project Enable that was played, we had a lot of persons who said they had constantly applied for jobs. Maybe they would pass the, application stage and everything, but then when they go for physical interviews and then they just discover that maybe this is a person with albinism, or this is a person who uses crutches or wheelchairs or is deaf or is dumb, immediately they tell the person, you know what, we'll get back to you. And in Nigeria, when they tell you we'll get back to you, you know that you don't have this job.
Though one of the things we do, one of our own thematic area at Project Enable Africa is to bridge the gap that exists between the demand and supply of labor for persons with disability. We upskill persons with disability to ensure that, one, they have the necessary skills to attract even employers to employ them to jobs. Then the other components of that is also to provide technical support to this corporate organization, even if you can attract them. Do you have the necessary policies? Do you have the necessary infrastructure? Do you have reasonable accommodation to ensure that these persons with disability can easily integrate into your workforce? So that's a component of
Well, that makes a lot of sense, because one thing is to ensure that these people with disability are not sitting down and probably waiting for, should I say, manna from heaven. They are, upscaling and upskilling, as you have said. And I think that's a very good innovation. Well, to just round up briefly, one more question. So it's quite interesting that the UN strategy will be ending this year, 2025. And quite interestingly, Nigeria's first report came out this year. So when you check globally, of course, we have countries that have working legal frameworks for inclusivity when it comes to people with disability. You talk about the USA, you talk about Sweden, a lot of countries. Where do you think this places Nigeria? When you look at our success rates, especially from that report, where are we in the global framework?
All right. Though we are not where we're supposed to be. So in Africa, for instance, I think Nigeria still ranks among, if not the first 10, in terms of the implementation of his commitments to the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability. There are some countries that does not even have existing law in the first place. Nigeria has moved further a step to ensure that we have a national disability law. The level of implementation might be a little bit we may a little bit down, because we still have largely most of our public infrastructure buildings are not even accessible for persons with disability. Even to our national offices in terms of even airports, both the local and the international wing. A little, maybe international wing, there are some level of inclusivity in terms of the infrastructure. So, but in terms of the local airports or the local wings of the airports, some of largely not accessible for persons with disability. In fact, struggles. Sometimes you have to carry a person with disability into the plane. So, but we are not where we're supposed to be, and there are largely gaps that needs to be met, and that can only be driven by partnership, collaboration, and saying that this should be a collective effort. Sometimes we blame government for everything, but if individuals, corporate organizations can also serve as watchdogs, or even serve as an example, as standard. You talk about what Project Enable are doing in terms of employment for persons with disability. That is an example. That can even, because one of the reasons why we also create those documentaries is to also use that as a success story, to buy support or even commitments from corporate organization. That's to see, because many corporate or business owners are afraid that, if I take in persons with disability, will it not cost me a lot? Will this person be able to deliver on a job and the rest? But we have seen things that have worked. It's working at the global stage. It can also work here in Nigeria. It only calls for our immediate action and see the importance of having disability inclusion.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Michael. It's been quite an insightful conversation. We're hoping that come December, for example, or come next year, 2026, we'll have more gaps met, more implementations done and ready. Thank you so much for joining us on Hude Hour.
Thank you
so much. Thank you for having me. And it's a very meaningful conversation.
Thank you so much. Well, now we're going to a very short break. When we return, we will have Sharon tell us what's happening within the women affairs space and what they are doing as regards inclusion. Please stay with us.
For 2 seasons, Timeline has taken you on a journey of exploring real-life issues and solutions. Well, we are on to season 3 of Timeline, a space where we talk about real issues shaping our world. Here, we sit down with voices that matter, with people who are driving change and making impact. We are talking about more than just problems. We're talking about the attainment of our collective commitment, the global goals, the SDGs, and of course, our community-specific targets. Our conversations aren't just about highlighting problems. They're about finding solutions that truly works, solutions that touches lives and impact the globe. An appraisal of how close we are in meeting our global and community targets. We create rooms for honest, thought-provoking conversations, a ride that you wouldn't want to miss. Well, this is Timeline, where conversations lead to solutions that change lives.
Well, thank you for staying tuned. Now, Sharon, who was here earlier, is back to give us details on what women are doing within the space. Hello, Sharon.
Hi. Well, we've been talking about, inclusion, disability inclusion, and all of that, and a lot has been said. Well, let's say this is part of inclusion because I'll be spotlighting some women who are disabled, but they've done amazingly well in their community and the globe at large. We'll be starting off with Aben Girma. She's the first deaf-blind person to graduate from Harvard Law School. She's a human rights lawyer advancing disability justice. Now, President Obama named her a White House Champion of Change. She also received the Ellen Keller Achievement Award, a spot on Forbes 30 under 30 list and Time 100 Talks. Also, President Bill Clinton, Prime Minister Justice Trudeau, and Chancellor Angela Merkel have all honored Aben. Now, she believes disability is an opportunity for innovation, and she teaches organizations the importance of choosing inclusion. The NY Times, Oprah Magazine, and Today featured a memo. And the memo Aben wrote is The Deaf-Blind Woman Who Conquered Harvard Law. Our next, of course, spotlighted disability woman is Lachi. Now, Lachi is a multi-award-winning EDM recording artist, Grammys board governor, and community leader advocating for disability, culture, inclusion, and accessibility in the music industry. She was named a new champion in advocacy by Billboard. Lachi
has been featured in NY Times, also BBC, Essence, and Variety, receiving Supporters of the Year for her role in the NORA Project Leadership Council and the Social Justice Award from Nightlife Culture for her advocacy work. Now, including her efforts bringing accessibility to the 64th Grammy International telecast, apart from holding talks with the White House, UN, Kennedy Center, and Fortune 500 firms. Liche is also the founder and president of RAM-PD, a critical acclaimed global coalition elevating disabled music professional. She's also a personality, having hosted a PBS American Master segment, voiced Netflix audio description, and appeared in national accessibility ads, and a touring performer and a speaker. And all of this have brought her, lots of high energy fashion award and lots of messages, celebrating disability culture across the globe. Our next person we'll be spotlighting is Arunima Sinha, who is an Indian mountaineer and a sportswoman. She is India's first amputee and world's first female amputee to scale Mount Everest, Mount Kilimanjaro, and of course a lot of mountains also. She lost a leg when she was about 8 years old, but she of course didn't let that deter her, and she took a vow that many would think impossible. Now, go from that day onward was not just to become an adept to walking with prosthetic leg, but she also scaled the highest point in the world, that's the Mount Everest. Well, that's all we have for you today on women that we are, of course, spotlighting, disabled women we are spotlighting. So, over to you, Blessing. What do you think about this amazing women? Because I have a lot to speak about them, but I would like to hear your view on that.
Well, it's quite amazing to see a lot of women doing well when it comes to development initiatives and not just limiting themselves to having disabilities on the one hand. I think it's very commendable, especially since these women you're spotlighting are women with disabilities. It reminds me of women like Esther in Kenya, who is actively a part of Kenya's initiative to help girls and women with disability. So I must say it's really innovative, is very important, and women are doing the most.
Talking about women who have disabilities and are doing the most, I know Stella Young of Australia. She's from Australia. She's a disabled person, and constantly she wanted to see people with disabilities in the news, and so she decided to create her own online magazine and even create her own comedy show and everything like that, and that has helped spotlight other young persons, even older persons who have disabilities in their country. There's also Judy Human. Now, Judy Human has climbed up to become a U.S. Assistant Secretary for Special Education and also for other things as regards disabilities. And she decided, women are emotional beings constantly, and she decided that she was going to ensure that people or women with disabilities are on the spotlight. And she went and became a model. She took that, that bold, conscious step, went for exhibitions and, trainings, and she got there and she was picked. And before you know it, she even got to become one of the fashion ambassadors for Beyonce's clothing line. So that's good. Thank you so much, Sharon, for this wonderful contribution and spotlights as regards women in the disabled space.
Well, now we go on a very short break. When we return, we'll have Omokafe Dennis give us details on the entertainment scene. Please stay tuned. Well, glad to know you are still there. Now we turn to Omokafe Dennis to give us details on the entertainment scene. Hello, Omokafe.
Hi, Blessing.
Hello again.
Okay, yes, hello again, and hello, Sharon. Yes, move straight to the entertainment segment where we are going straight to Portugal and Spain. Yes, they're in collaboration for something amazing. New bracelet instantly detects date, rape, drugs, and drinks. Scientists in Portugal and Spain have created a bracelet that can detect chemically submissive drugs in drinks within seconds. This tool aims to help prevent sexual assault at events like concerts and nightclubs. The bracelet is currently for sale in both countries through the startup NanoArt. The bracelet is a simple paper wristband with an embedded sensor. A person can test their drink by touching the bracelet with a straw. If the drink contains one of the 3 date-rape drugs such as GHB, burundanga, or cathinones, the sensor will change color to green. GHB is the most common of these drugs. It is odorless, colorless, and tasteless, and is quickly cleared from a person's system, making rapid detection crucial. Now, according to Carlos, a project coordinator at Nova University Lisbon, the bracelet serves as an immediate deterrent and preventative tool. He cited a successful trial in Valencia, Spain, where a significant decrease in cases of rapes and attempted rape was observed after the system was introduced. The research team is now working with legal authorities to ensure the bracelet results can be used as forensic evidence in courts. Their ultimate goal is to offer a simple, effective tool to prevent sexual abuse in vulnerable environments like bars and festivals. Next one is Muniba Mazari appointed UN Sustainable Development Goals. Advocate, public speaker, rights activist, and United Nations Women National Goodwill Ambassador Muniba Mazari has been appointed to serve as a UN Sustainable Development Goals advocate. The appointment recognizes her commitment to promoting inclusion, gender equality, and social justice, both in Pakistan and globally, UN Women announced earlier this year. As part of the role, Mazari will join a group of global leaders and influencers, including Barbadian Prime Minister Mia Mottley and Queen Mathilde of Belgium, working to raise awareness, inspire action, and mobilize support for the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. In his official letter, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres commended Mazari's inspirational leadership, saying she is an inspiration to many and a prominent voice on inclusion and gender equality. Speaking about her appointment, Mazari said she is deeply honored to be appointed as an SDG advocate. Mazari was appointed Pakistan's first woman goodwill ambassador to advance gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls in 2015. Talk about what women, girls, and of course young people in extension are doing as regards the sustainable development goals, using of course their own equipment.
Well, I think that's quite an initiative. It may look as if women are topping the charts when it comes to this, because I think Sharon highlighted some women who are doing well, and then you are highlighting quite a number of women who are doing well as well. So I think that's quite commendable. And then going back to the very first story of the bracelet, I must say
that's huge.
It's innovative, you know, and looking to protect people during entertainment shows, festivals. I must say that is quite commendable. And those are the kind of initiatives that aim to promote safety, even in the entertainment industry. Kudos to them.
Of course. Yeah, I would say it's an amazing one. You know, that's exactly what caught my attention when we were talking about like a bracelet. Really, technology has gone way up there, and it's amazing, I would say. I just hope it's sustainable. We hope not to hear about it just now, and then later on we see that it's not, working as well as it should do. But I believe that it will limit, of course, rape cases in that country, and we hope that we can also even bring it, into our own country, as well as other countries that have, high rates of rape there. So that's a good initiative, I must say.
Of course, I hope to see more homegrown solutions in that Pakistan and space, and also here in Nigeria. And of course, we hope that it will be sustainable. Well, that's how we have it, or that's how we wrap it up for the entertainment segment right here on Hude Hour. See you next time.
Well, thank you so much, ladies. Thank you, Sharon, and thank you, Omokafe, for the wonderful insights.
Of course.
And this is where we call it quits on today's edition of Hude Hour right here on Hude Network. Ensure to join us for another amazing episode. My name is Blessing Dagin.